You've just gotten your first 3D printer and are super excited to start printing and selling your prints to others. But before we get started, I want to share some of the challenges that I've faced trying to make money 3D printing that you're probably going to face yourself. The goal of this video is to give you some insight to what you can expect, as well as helping you prevent some of the mistakes that I've made myself, so you can be a little prepared if they ever happen to you. First of all, I just wanted to say that I'm no expert when it comes to 3D printing, and this video is just based upon my own experience trying to make money 3D printing as a hobby. When I got my first 3D printer and had finally set it up, I was ready to start printing. But I had no clue as to what to print and sell to a potential customer. So therefore I had two options. Either to design something myself or to find something online that somebody else already had designed. Since I didn't know a lot about 3D modeling at the time, I decided to look for other designs that I could just print out right away. And that's when I stumbled upon these Ryobi tool mounts. I couldn't, of course, start printing them right away since I didn't have permission to do so. But when I had, I was ready to start printing. Every now and then I get a message from somebody that is interested in buying these 3D printed wall mounts. We find out what type of tools they have and which tools they need wall mounts for. And when I know this, I can get started printing them out on my 3D printer. When they're finished, I put them in a box, package them, order shipping, and receive my payment. And I know this sounds pretty simple and straightforward, but truth is that this isn't the case most of the time. The biggest challenge when it comes to 3D printing is without the doubt the time it takes to actually print things. It's a very time-consuming process, and I quickly realized this when I got my first 3D printer and experienced it myself. This battery mount alone takes up to 7 hours to print. 7 hours! And this isn't really that big. Now imagine how long it would take to print all of these. There's no wonder how these long print times can cause problems, especially if you're supposed to print a lot of them in a short amount of time. The fact that the printer has to constantly print for 7 hours naturally means that there will be some room for failure. And this doesn't necessarily have to happen before 6 hours into the print. It could easily happen right before it's supposed to be finished. And this basically means that you have wasted a lot of filaments and time. This is probably the worst feeling. As everything else, 3D printers aren't indestructible, and they have a tendency to break at the worst possible moments. The whole printer though doesn't usually break at the same time, but a 3D printer is made of many small and intricate parts, and after a lot of 3D printing over many hours, they get a lot of strain, and this can cause them to break. Sometimes, however, this isn't noticeable until you start printing and discover that the printer isn't printing correctly. I just began printing and it seems like there's some issue with the extrusion. And after inspecting the 3D printer, I realized that the two gears that pull the filament through the tube, wasn't really spinning. The gear was just grinding and slipping on the filament. It looks like I need one of these. But as you can see on the delivery time, it's 15 to 25 business days. And that's a pretty long time, considering that I have a lot of a lot of orders that I really should have get started printing already. Experience has taught me that it's very smart to have spare parts lying around, especially of the parts that break, that has a tendency to break, as well as the parts that you have to change frequently. When calculating the amount of profit that you've made on a sale, you of course have to take the amount of filament you use and electricity into consideration. But you also have to have the wear and tear of the machine in the back of your mind. A traditional 3D printer isn't made to withstand constant 3D printing over many days. So this will naturally reduce or drastically reduce the lifetime of the machine. So this makes the whole process of calculating your real profits very difficult. The first item I tried to print and sell was a small but cute dog. The file to this dog was conveniently included with the printer that I had bought, but I primarily did this to see if there was any interest in it. But I quickly realized that this originally extremely cheap dog, in regards to the amount of filament, would have to cost a lot more if I was going to sell it favorably and with profit, because of the amount of money it would take to actually ship it to the customer. This made me realize that it would have to be an extremely desirable dog if somebody would be willing to pay 10 times more in shipping prices than the value of the print itself. Therefore, I concluded that I would have to sell either bigger or more complex prints, or multiple of them, in order to avoid shipping prices exceeding the actual value of the print itself. As I've already mentioned, 3D printing is an extremely time-consuming process that can take up to several hours depending on the print. And there is really no way to actually speed up this process, unless you compromise on the integrity of the print, of course, but this usually isn't the best solution, especially for something like this wall mount, where the print is actually supposed to hold a print up in the air. Because of this, there is a maximum amount of prints that you can carry out in a specific amount of time. There is, for example, no way for me to print 10 of these battery mounts within a day. That's simply impossible. It's the long printing times that makes 3D printing very hard to scale, unless you have a lot of printers, of course, and that's really the only way to scale 3D printing. So if you're planning on printing at a higher rate, it's crucial to have multiple 3D printers in order to print items simultaneously. But even though you can print a lot more items in less amount of time, there is a downside. More printers usually means that there will be a lot more failed prints as well as damaged parts. I would of course encourage you to design your own prints and try to sell them, because the possibilities are almost endless. You can basically print whatever you want, as long as it's within the printer's capabilities. This means that the item that you end up designing is unique, and that you're the only one offering this product to the customer. You can make both practical items such as these Ryobi tool mounts, or pieces of art that one can have displayed around the house as decor, such as this statue of Yoda. It's totally up to yourself, and your imagination is basically the only thing standing in your way. But if you're like me and you don't want to design your own prints, there are thousands to choose from online. But if you do go for this option, make sure to ask the owner for permission. This is of course if you're going to print and sell them to others, which is what I assume. 3D printing is without a doubt a very fun and interesting way to start making some extra money. But as you know by now, it has its challenges. As we have discussed in this video, there are a lot of things that can impact your 3D printing. all the way from damaged parts to high electricity prices. But on the bright side, however, getting started 3D printing has never been as affordable and cheap as it is right now. Even though making money 3D printing wasn't as easy as I had initially thought, I do have learned a lot. Everything from dealing with customers to fixing an incredibly complex machine. It does cover a pretty broad field, and even though I might not be profitable all in all, if I include the time that I've invested, I do have learned a lot by having 3D printing as one of my hobbies. And I'm convinced that you will as well. As always, I hope this video was educational in some way or another, and that you did get something out of it. And I'll see you in the next video.